Opening day is right around the corner as the Toronto Blue Jays have high hopes for the 2023 season. Hey everyone, welcome into another SUN Sports Roundtable. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto SUN Sports columnist Steve Simmons and Toronto SUN Blue Jays beat writer Rob Longley. And guys, this is always a great time of the year for sports fans. Just as the NHL and NBA are gearing up for the postseason, it's time for Major League Baseball to kick off the regular season. And as far as the Toronto Blue Jays go, it was a busy offseason that changed a lot of the look of this team heading into 2023. Steve, we'll start with you. What in your mind is the biggest key for the Jays to have success this year? Is it the pitching, the hitting, or is it just to be healthy?
I think it always starts with health. You need your big players to be healthy and to be able to play, the 140, 150 games that's necessary. But I'm going to get a little more specific here, and I'm going to go bullpen. I think we know this is a good offensive team. I think we know this is a pretty good defensive team. I think we know they have enough starting pitching 1 to 4 to be competitive. What we don't know any year of baseball, and that's the weird thing about bullpens, is you don't know from year to year to year which guy's going to be good, which guy's going to be successful. It looks like they have a deep bullpen. It looks like they've put together a deep bullpen. But with bullpen guys, year to year, there's no correlation between last year and the year before and the year before that. So that's what I'm curious to see. Can this group be as good as it looks to be on paper?
I think it always comes down to pitching, and I think it starts with starting pitching. And I think the rotation this year has the potential to be much stronger than it was last year. In fact, it has the potential to be the strongest starting rotation in the American League. If you look at Alek Manoah continuing to improve and grow in confidence as the number one guy, you look at Kevin Gausman, who actually had an underrated season last year and probably and could well be a Cy Young candidate again this year. And then you add Chris Bassett into that top three. That's a pretty elite rotation at the front end of your rotation there. And then you hope for a little bit of a bounce back from Jose Barrios. The pressure's off of him now. He's not the front end guy, the opening day starter like he was last year. They just need him to be competent. And then you hope that what Yusei Kikuchi did in spring training can carry over a little bit into the regular season. And now all of a sudden you have a competent fifth guy as well. And that's where it all comes into what Steve is saying. If you have a rotation that can give you 6 to 7 innings every night, I think that makes the bullpen that much stronger. The bullpen was pretty strong last year, but by the end of the season, they were getting pretty worn down. They had too many games where they were needed in the fourth and the fifth and sixth inning, and you could see the wear and tear of that group by the end of the season. Now you add Eric Swanson, who, by all accounts, has gotten rave reviews down there this spring, and you've got Jimmy Garcia, who's had a strong spring, Jordan Romano coming back as the closer, and a guy who's not going to start the season on the main roster, but I think is going to be huge for that bullpen before the season's over, and that's Nate Pearson. So yeah, I think it starts and ends with pitching because we know this team can hit, and we know the defense is going to be better. But if the rotation and the bullpen can be improved upon from last year, then that's where this team becomes a serious threat.
I'm going to go back to the World Series and the playoffs of last year, and if you watch the Houston Astros night in, night out, what they did. Their starters didn't go very far, and they didn't have to. But what they did once they went to their pen, I don't have the stats in front of me, but the numbers were phenomenal. And not only did they get people out, but they got people out convincingly. And what this bullpen with the Jays has yet to show, it's not been one of those swing and miss bullpens. They don't have that kind of hard throwing, unless Pearson becomes one of those guys. They don't have that kind of hard throwing stuff. And if you've got to match up against Houston somewhere along the way in a playoff series to get to the World Series, and that's the team in front of you, then that's a heck of a challenge for this group when you compare what we saw from Houston a year ago to what we've seen from the Blue Jays in the past.
Yeah, that's a great point, Steve. You need this group needs more swing and miss. I think you're going to get a little bit more of it with Swanson, and I think Garcia has the potential of that, and Pearson, but the elite bullpens in baseball have a lot of swing and miss, and maybe that's one thing that this group didn't have last season.
A lot of new faces on this Jays team, whether it's Kevin Kiermaier, Dalton Varsho, Chris Bassett, along with the returning stars on this team. Rob, who is the one player to keep an eye on in 2023?
You know what? I think it comes back to the big guy, the superstar, Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think so much of the offense kind of hinges around him. And, I think the question going into the season, is it going to be the 48 home run Vlad Guerrero Jr. of 2021 or the 32 home run Vlad Guerrero Jr. of last season, or somewhere in between? I talked to guys in spring training who think that he can hit 50 this year, and I wouldn't bet against that. I mean, he's had a strong spring, and he seems very determined to be an elite hitter again. He was elite last year, let's face it, but he wants to be borderline dominant. He wants to be mentioned in the MVP conversation again. And when you have a superstar like that and surround him with a bunch of really good hitters as well, then that's when this offense can really take off. And that's when you can make up for some of the absence in offense that you're going to have with the departure of Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Teoscar Hernandez.
I look at Guerrero as I just expect greatness. I mean, he wasn't fantastic last year. He was beyond great the year before. If he can be somewhere between where he was last year and where he was the year before that, I think that's good enough. The guy I'm fascinated by is Bo Bichette. And not because of anything he does offensively, because I think we've seen him at his absolute best offensively late last season, and we've seen him probably at his worst offensively early in the season. I think he's closer to the guy at the end than he is to the one at the beginning. What I'm fascinated to see is Bo Bichette at shortstop. And it's Bo Bichette at shortstop without shifts. Because Bo Bichette at shortstop with shifts, which is easier for defensive players, was just an average major league shortstop. So what happens when you take the shift away? Does he get better? Does he get worse? How does he respond? I look at the Jays much like I look at the Maple Leafs. You start with the Maple Leafs and it's all Matthews and Marner. And you start with the Blue Jays and it's all Guerrero and Bichette. And I think those two guys are the guys to watch with the Jays. And I'm really interested to see what Bo Bichette does in the field, because I think the better he plays in the field, the better he's going to be at the plate.
That's a good point, Steve. I mean, so much emphasis on this team off season on how it's improved defensively, and it has. But the most important spot in the infield, you have to be good there too. Take away the shift and look back at some of the struggles that he had last year. He made a lot of errors in his 2 seasons at shortstop. There's going to be a lot of spotlight on Bo Bichette defensively, and it will be key to how well this team plays defensively.
Just want to say, you know what? The season starts Thursday. I can't wait. I've seen enough spring training. I've seen enough games. I've read enough stories. I've done enough of that. Let's get going. Let's get moving on this. Let's have some fun.
Agreed.
Yeah, well said. It's the same conversation every single year at this time. But as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. For Steve Simmons and Rob Longley, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another SUN Sports Roundtable.